At Virginia Tech, we are committed to creating a more just and inclusive world. Grounded in UPROSM, this commitment is part of who we are. It's at the core of our mission. We prepare our students to serve anyone, anywhere, at any time. Now this commitment is more important than ever. We are in the midst of radical social change, a global pandemic, a national social justice crisis, changes in our climate and environment, issues that require the imagination and innovation of diverse teams in business, public service, science and technology, health and human services. The future of humankind requires that we prepare students to not only navigate this world, but to be leaders in shaping its future. By increasing cultural competency, addressing issues of equity, and creating a community that better reflects today's world, we are creating leaders who understand and embrace cultural differences, know the value of varied perspectives, and are prepared to take a seat at the table and make their voices heard. As a land-grant university, our role is to make education accessible. Our mission is to prepare students for today's world. Now, more than ever, inclusion, equity, and diversity must be at the heart of Virginia Tech, guiding our priorities, continuing our mission, so that we may serve all, and that all may serve.
Welcome. I'm John Lawson. The Tidewater region is my home. It's where my father, who graduated from Virginia Tech in 1949, started the company I now run. It's where my wife and I have raised 3 children, including one son who graduated in 2019 and another who is now enrolled in the building construction program. It's an area rich in agriculture, seafood, shipbuilding, military personnel, coastal beauty, and tourism. It's also an area where, like much of the country, communities are asking how they can do better, how they can be more inclusive and contribute to a just world. As Hokies, we embrace inclusion in our motto. We also made it a campaign priority. By supporting inclusion and diversity, we are making sure that every Hokie is prepared to succeed in today's world. And we're making progress. Underrepresented minority students make up more than 19% of this year's entering class, up from 13% 5 years ago, and within reach of our goal of 25% in 2022. Together, underrepresented and underserved students, including Hokies who are first generation, military veterans, or low income, comprise 39% of entering undergraduates, a stone's throw from our goal of 40%. Alumni like you are making this happen. For a second year straight, donors have given more than $1 million to the Beyond Boundaries Scholars Program. With matching dollars from the university, 331 students who otherwise couldn't afford it were able to attend Virginia Tech this year. And yet we can do more. Here to discuss the topic of inclusion and diversity, what more we must do and why it matters, is Virginia Tech President Tim Sands and 3 of our distinguished alumni.
Thank you for that welcome, John. I'm very pleased to be here today with these outstanding Hokies to discuss inclusion and diversity at Virginia Tech. We're all together in one room, which is something you don't see often these days. We wanted to engage in this important discussion face-to-face, so we followed strict safety protocols in setting up this video studio. We're sitting at a safe distance and keeping our masks in place. Our commitment to safety during the COVID-19 pandemic is strong and ongoing. We urge all members of our Virginia Tech community to remain vigilant and practice all safety measures recommended by the CDC and our local health authorities. Now let's begin this discussion by introducing our panel. We have with us today Lynn Dowdy, retired U.S. Chairman and CEO of KPMG. Lynn was the first female top executive at KPMG and the first woman to serve as chairman and CEO of one of the Big Four professional services firms. She was also the first person in her family to go to college. Lynn is an engaged alumna of the Pamplin College of Business, where she is a member of the advisory council. She also is one of the tri-chairs of Boundless Impact, the campaign for Virginia Tech. Welcome, Lynn. Aaron Rouse is also with us today. From being a standout college football player to making it to the highest level of the game and playing for multiple organizations, Aaron understands the importance of teamwork. Fast forward to becoming a Virginia Beach City Councilman, only the fourth Black councilman in Virginia Beach history. He can personally relate to breaking barriers and setting records. During his first year on the council, Aaron served as a city liaison for the Something is in the Water Festival presented by Pharrell Williams, which was an historic moment for the city. He serves on the council while maintaining his nonprofit foundation, Rouse's House, which focuses on education and youth in the community. Welcome, Aaron. And finally, we have Pro Football Hall of Famer Bruce Smith. Bruce was born and raised here in Norfolk, Virginia by loving working-class parents who instilled in him the value of hard work. Bruce became a standout athlete at Booker T. Washington High School and earned an athletic scholarship to attend Virginia Tech, where he distinguished himself as a superior lineman and ultimately concluded his tenure there as the most honored player in Hokie history. Bruce's prolific 19-year NFL career culminated with his procurement of the NFL record for the all-time leader in quarterback sacks. Post-NFL retirement, Bruce has taken his place in business as a successful real estate developer and in his Hampton Roads community as a philanthropist and champion for equal rights. Welcome, Bruce. Thanks to all of you for being here and for bringing your personal perspectives to this discussion. Lynn, let's start with you. Lynn, you not only broke barriers yourself at KPMG, but under your leadership, the company was ranked among the top 10 for diversity. Tell us about the importance of diversity in the corporate environment.
Well, thank you, Tim, first for putting together this really important discussion. And I have to admit, when you introduced Bruce, I had this urge to say Bruce, but I didn't. But I had to say it. I'm so honored to be with these guys here today. But this conversation is so important. Strength lies in differences, not similarities. And it has never been more important in the corporate environment, really in all of society, for us to be focused on inclusion and diversity. I'll give you just a few reasons why. One, it fosters creativity and innovation. And the problems today are so complex that you need different perspectives at the table to solve those problems. Secondly, it improves morale and culture. And people want to work in different groups with different kinds of people. You learn more, you get different perspectives, and it makes all of us better. Thirdly, it will boost your brand, your reputation. More people will be attracted to your organization. More customers will be attracted as well. And I think finally, what a lot of us care about too is increasing your profits. All of those things that I talked about before, those intangibles, it leads to better decision-making, better performance, better outcomes, which leads to higher profits. And there have been numerous studies that prove that time and time again, that greater diversity within the organization will lead to better performance. And so I think this conversation is so important now because so many organizations are focused on this. And I think we have done really well with gender equality and diversity. I think we are woefully pitiful when it relates to people of color. And I know that that'll be something that we want to talk about in our discussion today.
Thank you, Lynn. Aaron, as a Virginia Beach councilman, talk to us about the role of inclusion and diversity in public service.
Well, thank you, President Sands, for having me here in this important conversation. It's a real honor to sit up here also with Lynn and hearing your profile. I must say, you're one of those pioneers who also continue to break those glass ceilings. So it's an honor to be on here with you as well. and of course, the legendary Bruce Smith. You know, he needs no more introduction. You know, you talk about public service in today's society. I mean, I think we all can understand we live in a very polarized society, and one that kind of overlooks the foundation of public service, and that is serving your community, serving the public. And I think it's something we have to get back to is that civility, that acceptance for having differences of opinions, and one that celebrates the true diversity of our nation. And quite frankly, you know, Hampton Roads Tidewater is just a microcosm of that. You know, we are a very diverse region here. And so the more and more different perspectives you can include, and hear those voices, then the better off and healthier society and region you will have. So again, public service is ensuring that no matter what your differences are, no matter what you look like, no matter what background you may come from, or no matter what your party affiliation is, you know, you have a perspective, you have the right to be heard. And that is something that makes, you know, this democracy here in the United States, makes it truly unique and special, and one we should thrive to protect.
Thank you, Aaron. Bruce, through your entrepreneurial activities, you've invested and created opportunities here in your home area as well as in Blacksburg. What is the role of inclusion and diversity in your endeavors?
Well, I'd like to echo some of the same sentiments that Lynn expressed, and obviously Aaron. I want to thank you, Dr. Sands, and Virginia Tech for its leadership in having this paramount discussion. It's disheartening to me that being raised in the 60s, the same conversations that my parents were having and the struggles and the battles of trying to make it and be successful, that 50, 60 years later, we're still having those discussions and the same conversations. So while it's great to have these discussions and these conversations, there has to be a plan of action. There has to be a call to action. Obviously, Lynn has broke barriers. Obviously, Councilman Rouse is breaking some barriers. But conversation without a strategic plan going forward is fruitless. So that's why I felt it being so important to be a part of this panel today. And some of the barriers that I have experienced after my career was over, where I reached the pinnacle of my career in the world of real estate development. Implicit bias, systemic racism. It's a structure, but the people that we vote in as our elected officials, and the policies that are created, that helps to perpetuate and even allow this process of lack of inclusion and diversity to take place. So we've got a lot of work to do. We have to build a foundation that is more inclusive, that is more diverse, because when the pot's bigger, everybody wins. And one of the things that I've learned during the course of being this businessman and entrepreneur, if you don't want to do business with me because of the color of my skin, you're missing the most important color of them all, and that's green. Green is the most important color because that's what allows us all to have an opportunity to enjoy life and provide for our families and do the things that are necessary to show how great this country really can be.
Thank you. As you know, creating a more inclusive community is among Virginia Tech's top priorities, and our campaign goals reflect this. It's our aim to increase the number of underrepresented and underserved students, to increase our diversity of our faculty and staff, and to provide the financial assistance that is every accepted student needs to be successful. Is it enough? What more can Virginia Tech do? what should we be asking of ourselves and our community? Bruce, let's start with you.
From a standpoint that Virginia Tech has a great deal of influence. They can set policies that reach out across the state and beyond the state lines to create policies that is a welcoming environment to potential college students. But it has to start far beyond that. You see, once they've reached the level of being in high school, sometimes it's already too late. Mm-hmm. We have to have this pipeline and this kind of mindset that we want to reach these kids when they're in grade school, junior high school, and letting them know what Virginia Tech is all about. The world of business. We have one of the best business schools at Virginia Tech. Also agriculture and engineering. So we have a platform to be able to reach out to these students and use our influence to create policies to prepare these students for success and provide an opportunity, because this is what ultimately this is about. It's about providing an opportunity, not about a gift or subsidies or set-asides. This is about opportunity to change a person's life for generations and generations to come.
Well, thank you, Bruce. One thing I wanted to comment on that you said a little earlier was the importance of not just talking, but actually acting and planning. And one of the things I'm really proud about, and I have to admit we kind of stumbled into this, was we were able to integrate our strategic affairs office with diversity and inclusion. So Minna Pratt-Clark, Dr. Pratt-Clark, who's been in that role of vice president, is vice president of strategic affairs for the whole university. Everything we do in strategy, not just in inclusion and diversity, but she's also running our diversity and inclusion effort. And what she's been able to do, integrating that, is to create a diversity and inclusion and equity plan that's part of everything that we do rather than as a sidecar. And I think that's absolutely right. And one of the things that we have learned is exactly what you're describing. We have some researchers, the Ramies, out of our Fralin Biomedical Research Institute at VTC, who are world leaders in this conversation about when do those disparities start. And it turns out they start before birth.
Correct.
And you really have to reach back. And I can't say we've solved that problem. I don't think it's a generational problem. But one of the things I am proud of is we started to recognize, to your point, that we do need to think more than just about those who come knocking at the door, but how do you reach out and get into the communities where that talent exists, but probably doesn't even know about Virginia Tech. We started something called the College Access Collaborative that reaches out into those school systems, and it's been running a few years and made a big difference. Our Virginia Tech underrepresented minority population is growing fast, partly because of that, and the Black College Institute and our Hispanic College Institute. But I think you're absolutely right. It doesn't work if it's just, you think you're running a university, that's what your responsibility is for. For a land-grant university, we have responsibility, again, you mentioned this, for the entire Commonwealth. And it's not just about the 18-year-old and the 22-year-old. It's reaching out and building those pathways. So thank you for mentioning that. And I think you're absolutely right. That's a generational challenge ahead of us, not something that's going to happen overnight, but we've got to be aware of it.
Agreed.
Aaron, could you tell us what you think we should be doing? What more should Virginia Tech and our community be doing?
I'm always proud to be from Virginia Tech, and being a public servant, I really live and uplift our motto, ut prosum, that I may serve. So when I think about my school and how we can really increase the diversity and inclusion, I think about my own personal story and where I come from. I was born in a single parent household, 4 of us, worked my entire life, older twin sisters. And if it wasn't for athletics, so to speak, and my mother really, hard in pursuit and focused, you graduate from high school, that we couldn't even think about college, by the way, because we couldn't afford it. It wasn't something that, we thought about going to college because high school, especially in the African American community, for young Black males and women, you were either, given a statistic of being dead or in jail by 18 or 21. And so when I think about Virginia Tech and how we can do more to serve and be more well-rounded and serve our entire community, I think about some of those obstacles that are in place. And those obstacles are being, okay, what other scholarships can we offer students and those kids that goes beyond sports and athletics? One of the things I run into back home in my community is I see all these young kids and they always say, I want to go to school and play football, or, I want to play basketball. They want to be in the athletic sport. And I say, well, sports are only that much part of your life. No matter what you put up here, it's going to stay with you forever. And so Virginia Tech has to do more to offer academic scholarships, do those recruiting, understand the plights that, a lot of minorities and African Americans go through in order to even think about the idea of attending a four-year school such as prestigious Virginia Tech. And so these are some of the things I think we can make a lot of leeway in and make up a lot of ground and understand, okay, what are those obstacles that would prevent someone who's living below the poverty line or may come from, a disadvantaged background? How can we really pull those kids up and say, we want you at our school, we are looking for you, and what can we do to make sure not only if you attend our school, but you go on to succeed in our school and graduate and so on and so forth. So those are the things that I look for, when you're looking at our school at Virginia Tech, and again as an athlete, I want to see other, our diverse campus and other Black and African American minority students that come from different backgrounds who are not just there at Virginia Tech to play a sport. I want them there to celebrate the arts or to be in engineering or agriculture and business. And these are some of the focuses I think our school can do a lot to improve on.
Well, thank you for being an advocate for that perspective, because I think it's exactly where we need to go. When I talk to especially our African American students, but it's true for first generation students, low income students, you find out how important recruiting, being wanted, being reached out to is that high touch experience, and also the importance of support of scholarships and financial aid. One of the things that struck me in my time as a president is that it's not all about the income of your family, it's about the wealth and the assets that they've got. And we struggle with, I think, students who make it into Virginia Tech and maybe they have a scholarship or financial aid, but it doesn't cover everything. And then they have a family event, a life event, and it sets them back a little bit, where a family with some wealth and assets would be able to handle it. But if they don't have that resilience, they struggle. So if finances turn out to be incredibly important, and we're learning more about that every day.
And if I may, I think also, once we're able to recruit that diversity of students on campus, to also develop a campus that makes it more comfortable for students to want to stay there, as you just noted, to want to stay there. Things that they would see that may mimic back home, or a sense of familiarity that makes them feel, hey, this is my home away from home. Because a lot of times it becomes as a culture shock, a different way of life. And I think we all experience, homesickness our first year of school. But it's that willingness in campus in our schools to go out and meet these kids and these students where they are. And say, no, we want you here, and provide a safe space that wants them to be successful.
Aaron, I was just going to say, I think that point is so critical, because you and Bruce have both, articulated so well the importance of the attracting and having Virginia Tech serve these underrepresented populations that, represent so much talent for the future. But the key, you can do all the attracting and recruiting that you want and giving the scholarships, but it's to that point of, are you creating an environment that is inclusive? And in this moment in time in our history, I think we're all in our various networks having really difficult and courageous conversations. And I know that with some of my Black friends who, just given all the events that we've, been through and the injustice that we've seen, and, that's put this in the forefront. And I agree with you, Bruce. It's like, why are we still talking about this 40 years later? But at least we are. And I've said, I've heard my Black friends say, you know, welcome to my world. And my response is, you know, I didn't understand. And so now we have the opportunity to engage in that. And I know, Tim, that those conversations have been happening on campus, but I would definitely encourage more of that, because we've got to keep this in the forefront.
You know, Tim, I as I sit back and I listen to the panel, and it really touches my inner being, understanding this moment in time and this moment in history that we're living in. And it's been difficult over the last, I would say, over the last year, with all the social and racial injustices that have taken place. And it makes me reflect back to this university. We have to be bold. We have to be courageous. We have to tackle these issues and these problems head on. One of the things that inspired me, I believe it was in 2016 or 15, to write an open letter to the mayor about implicit bias and systemic racism here in Virginia Beach, about the current business practices that was shutting out women and minorities from having an opportunity at government contracts. And I called upon the city leaders, and Aaron is familiar with that, to conduct a disparity study. It was met with fierce resistance. It was met with, who needs inclusion? Why do we want diversity? And it finally, I knew it existed, but to hear the resistance of trying to allow for a more inclusive opportunities for women and minorities to do business. Now, I didn't take that task on because I was living a comfortable life. I didn't need to get folks that were against this movement that we created. They were perfectly fine with the status quo. They were perfectly fine with the implicit bias. They were perfectly fine and said there was nothing wrong with the way we did business. Well, I happened to do my homework from an anecdotal standpoint and from a statistical standpoint. And when they finally conceded and hired a firm to do a disparity study, the company, which was BBC out of Colorado, came back and said there were substantial disparities within the city of Virginia Beach business practices. And here's the recommendations for you to improve that. So I tell that story because Lynn has an opportunity, and I'm sure in recent years, she has started working towards making sure her company was aware of the inequities that existed. Aaron has an opportunity in creating policies and also with the disparity study being conducted, he can make sure the city is doing its part in following through with these recommendations to make this a more inclusive city and a more welcoming city. So I tell this story is because for years, I was living my comfortable life. And I realized that there was a problem. And if there's a problem, we have to address that problem. We have to be bold. We have to take ourselves out of the equation to a certain extent, but we have to use our voice to create change. And that's what I tried to do. So I call upon Virginia Tech and so many other leaders and so many other people that have influence whether you're a council person or a head of a Fortune 100 company, whatever it happens to be, we as Hokies can make a difference. And I charge each and every one of us to go out and do that.
Well, Bruce, we accept that challenge, but you're absolutely right. If you're in a leadership role, I think we have a responsibility to lead and feed difficult conversations. I mean, that's something we're not going to take advantage of this opportunity, this, I think, unique opportunity in our history, at least our recent history, unless we really do step up. So thank you for that. I think to your point, Aaron, creating an inclusive environment, there's a balance there. You've got to have difficult conversations, and that means that people who maybe don't have the privilege are going to have to be in a position where they have to be in those conversations. At the same time, you need to create an environment where they feel welcome and at home, and they feel some security in having those conversations. And that balance is what we're trying to strike. But your leadership, all three of you, showing the way is really important, and I think will motivate our community, those who aren't already engaged, to get up and start a difficult conversation and make this change while we can. Thank you for your for being here, for your willingness to engage in this conversation. I know we only had a very short amount of time to get in dialogue, but I think we could have done this for 5 or 6 hours, and I hope that all we did here was get that started for all of you, and look forward to continuing the conversation with all of you. Let's wrap up our discussion there. Thanks to all of you for your thoughtful comments. Now, through the wonders of technology, we will switch over to a live Q&A session. Thank you, and go Hokies!
Good evening and welcome, everyone. I'm Dawn Jeffries with Virginia Tech. We are now live with a little bit of magical help, as President Sands just mentioned. We are live with our panelists to take some of your questions and to focus on getting answers to some of the questions that you would like to ask tonight. You can see through the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. Feel free to go there, click on that, submit your question, just type them in. And through a little more magic, those will make their way to me, and I'll be able to ask our panelists. With that, welcome to our panelists as well, and thank you for taking part in this live portion with us to take questions as well. And I'll just get right to it. One of the first questions that came in this evening references retention, and that question is, what are the most impactful ways to retain underrepresented students, faculty, and staff? And President Sands, I'll start with you first.
Sure, thanks. That's a great question, because opening a door is one thing, but making sure that our students succeed is a whole different challenge. Retention at Virginia Tech is high. We're fortunate that way. We have had gaps, though, between the overall retention and our underrepresented minority and underserved student retention. Those gaps have closed. We're now within about 5 percentage points for all those groups. With some exceptions, when you break it down into smaller groups, you start to see some patterns that emerge. And one of the things we've learned from directly working with our students, talking to them, calling them up and saying, hey, how are you doing? What are your challenges? Is financial. And it's not just the traditional financial aid issue. It's financial resilience. Do they have the wealth or the assets? Does their family have the ability to be resilient? And if the answer is no, it presents a real challenge. And that's where our focus on making sure our students have the resources they need is so important. That's not the only issue. Having an inclusive environment is really important. Having a place that they can go, a student can go where they feel comfortable, but also be challenged as well. Those are all important. But the financial part sticks out when we talk to our students.
I cannot hear Don.
Yeah. I'm sorry, President Sands. Thank you. Can you tell us what the enrollment is, minority enrollment is at Virginia Tech right now?
Well, as you heard just a few minutes ago, our incoming class has 19.4%, the class that's just on campus now, underrepresented minority. We're pushing about 40% underrepresented, underserved. The overall enrollment lags that a bit, so we're maybe 5,000 underrepresented students on campus, about maybe 12,000 underrepresented or underserved. And underserved includes low income, first generation, and veteran status. as well as underrepresented minority. So it's significant. It's growing, but it does not reflect yet the population of Virginia, nor does it yet reflect the talent that we've got in Virginia, and that's really our big opportunity. And I think we started to open that door in a big way in the last few years, and we've got a lot of momentum. And with all of your help, I think we'll get there. But we're in a position where we're starting to find that if we gather, say, 4 students randomly together, we'll have at least one, if not 2, with some background that is different than what has traditionally been the majority background. And that enriches every casual conversation in the residence hall, every casual conversation playing basketball, whatever it may be, as well as our classroom and laboratory experiences.
You each touched on the racial tension that we're all feeling and have been over the last several months. I'd like to ask, that's something that's felt on college campuses, it's felt through businesses, all of the communities. President Sands, can you talk about how Virginia Tech has really adjusted the work that it's been doing in terms of inclusion and diversity? And also to our other panelists, can you talk about how you've been part of this changing landscape in your own work environments? What have you learned? What have you noticed that we could all benefit from?
Well, I'll be very brief because I'd love to hear our panelists speak on this. But just to give you a little background, for our Blacksburg campus primarily, we started conversations several years ago through Dr. Minaprat Clark's work, setting up the unfinished conversations series, and also the Making the Chair Fit series. And this has been incredibly valuable during the pandemic because before the pandemic, we could do that in person. Now we have to really find a way to do this electronically or via virtual means. And these conversations have been just wonderful, and they're ongoing, and they're challenging, and they're kind of in-your-face conversations. But if we hadn't, I think, been already engaged in that as we hit the pandemic and all the racial injustice that's been exposed and the reckoning that I think all of us have gone through, it has really given us an opportunity to make sure that we have been in dialogue and maintain that dialogue through this very challenging time.
I would add, Don, that it's so important to start with the conversation, and I think that was something that we talked about as part of our panel. But it then needs to quickly move to action. It's like, what are we going to do about the things that we learn, the things that just aren't right? And so I think it starts with the conversation, and then it's got to move quickly to action, and then of course, results.
Mm-hmm. I think here in the local government area, I think they're just twofold. People are seeing that there are certain limitations to what the government can do, but in that aspect of it, there are people who want to be heard. There's a completely younger generation who wants to be heard. African Americans who have been talking about the social injustices for decades, for hundreds of years, want to be heard, and then you have other communities, LGBTQ community as well, come along. Everybody's fighting for a right to be heard, but the key word is listen. You want people to listen, and as Lynn just stated, you want action. I think understanding that lip service is no longer going to get it done. This type of pacification. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, then push it off for a couple more years or so. No, people want action because the consequences and the choices are so high, the stakes are so high, and these things are directly affects people's lives. Access to education, better paying jobs. You talk about resources, being able to go to a 4-year school such as prestigious as Virginia Tech. All of these things are affecting people's lives directly, and so it's time for action. No more lip service.
Yeah, I think those are excellent points that Lynn and Councilman Rouse just brought up. And I was reading a quote about a week ago that people, when confronted with these situations, they listen to respond instead of listening to come up with a strategic plan. And that's the missing element that I think that we've missed out on. This is about the disenfranchised. This is about the lack of diversity and the lack of inclusion. We have a unique opportunity here. Virginia Tech is one of the leading educational institutions in the country. And we have to use our influence, our relationships, whether they be political or in the business arena, to create change, to foster policies, to help to break down those barriers. If you look at these policies and folks that are being disenfranchised, there's so many tentacles to it. You have housing disparities, educational disparities, healthcare disparities, and so forth. So we have to address those, and they start obviously with creating these policies that will reach out and touch those individuals that are facing those challenges. But just imagine how many individuals and talented minds that we've allowed to slip through the cracks. Those are the ones that we're trying to bring, those bright minds into this conversation, into that opportunity pool, so we can make this a better America. We can create these opportunities that will change lives for generations and generations, and it will make us a stronger America. So these are the points that I've been trying to get across, and again, I'm happy to be here with this panel and Dr. Sands.
Thank you, and we appreciate you being here. This next question is along the lines of inclusion as well that came in. Has the university considered ways to provide more support, greater support to LGBTQ communities on campus? President
Absolutely.
Sands.
This is as was just mentioned, this is one of the identity groups or spectrums that is so important in terms of our talent pool. And this is, I think, similar to what we're seeing with our African American Black students, our Hispanic, Latino, Latinx students, that when you bring students, when you create an inclusive environment, you bring different perspectives into the environment, and it really enriches everybody's experience. So we are, it's really interesting. We've got various identity groups and organizations that all have a seat at the table. And what we're working on right now is to integrate them into the governance process of the university. And I'd like to make one point to that, just to reflecting on some of the comments that I just heard, that the way to make progress is to integrate the planning that you're doing to increase the inclusion at your university and the diversity into the overall strategic plan. And we are in a process of doing that for LGBTQ students, faculty, staff, for our underrepresented minority staff, for and faculty and students, and also for veterans. That's another area we're focused on, for first generation and low income students. And you can't just focus on one group. You have to really do it all at once if you're going to create an inclusive environment that where everyone will benefit from the diversity that you've created.
And President Sands, I think this next question is probably most directed at you, but I would invite our panelists to comment as well. To be bold and create action, would Virginia Tech consider having all of the incoming freshmen paired with a minority as their roommate in an attempt to foster breaking down barriers and creating new friendships?
That's an interesting idea, and it reflects one of the goals that we have had, and the reason that we chose 25% underrepresented minority as a kind of a milestone toward creating environments where there is a conversation, there is an opportunity that just happens in the course of students' experience, where they are exposed to students who have had a different lived experience than they have. And as far as pairing roommates up by by race and ethnicity. We don't do that directly, but we do have interest groups. We have what we call living learning communities. And in some cases, these living learning communities are focused on understanding of critical race issues. They may be understanding international barriers, bringing people together from different countries. So we are trying to create that through our living experiences, through our living learning communities, where we bring people in who want to be challenged. But I like the idea. It is happening in an organic way, but we'll consider that and see if there's a way to maybe enhance the opportunities for students who really want to have that experience as having a roommate who has a very different story to tell.
Aaron,
Yeah,
Bruce, Lynn, as well. I'm curious
yeah,
what you think of
yeah, I
that.
just like to touch on that. I think having that happen organically is the best way to approach that. We can obviously encourage the interaction between races, so folks can learn from one another. But I think to try and force the issue, um, we may be setting ourselves up for maybe a bigger problem. But nevertheless, again, we have a unique opportunity. There are so many circumstances that we find ourselves into where folks can communicate with one another. They can interact with one another. Uh, one of the lessons that I've learned in sports is that when you put people on a team, both white and black, they have a common goal, and that's to win. That's what this should be all about. It's about winning. No matter whether you're black, you're white, this is about us as a university winning and leading and being that institution that everyone looks up to and aspires to be like. And taking a page, allowing folks to take a page from our leadership and saying that, you know what, we can use their model that they've adopted or they've acquired, and maybe, just maybe, we can make progress and we can do the right thing so far as is helping our students to understand that there's going to be inclusion and diversity, and everyone's going to have an opportunity to succeed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I wanted to ask about the Innovation Campus and Lance Collins. Virginia Tech recently hired Lance Collins to be the executive director of the Innovation Campus in Alexandria. And, that's a role where he intends to make that program the most diverse technology graduate program in the country. Can you talk about Bruce and Aaron and Lynn as business leaders, community leaders, what Virginia Tech alum can do to help us reach that goal?
I think here locally in Virginia Beach, which I'm located, and also in Hampton Roads area, it's about having access. So we spoke about this in earlier in our breakout room, but it's about access to higher levels of technology or to broadband. We understand there are certain communities who don't have access to the internet, and in today's age, that's a real hindrance in finding those pathways to success. And so, we spoke about how this current pandemic has highlighted a lot of inequities. And one of those inequities are within our educational system and those families who may have to go to a McDonald's or a Pizza Hut or a Chick-fil-A for the free Wi-Fi and don't necessarily have that access to the internet. And so when you talk about an innovation campus, and I think we said it on the panel earlier, and Bruce stated, that pipeline starts way earlier, starts elementary school and middle school, before you even get to talking about college. We'll have these communities, these students have access to those resources that's going to allow them to think about, hey, there's opportunities at Virginia Tech, at the innovation campus in Northern Virginia. So again, we have to reach these kids earlier through in K through 12 education to let them know just how bright their futures can be along those pathways.
Dawn, just one point. I know we have to wrap up, but as it relates to the Innovation Campus, I think we all know that creativity and innovation doesn't happen when you have, people with all the same background sitting as part of that team. And so I really applaud Lance on, putting diversity and inclusion at the centerpiece of what the Innovation Campus can truly achieve. And also, Tim, just from a campaign perspective, putting this really important topic of inclusion and diversity in the forefront, where our dollars can go to actually make a difference and bring to life the bold ideas that we have is really critical. So I'm really delighted to be part of this conversation because I think it's one that's going to serve us well for the future.
Thank you,
Lynn,
Lynn,
thank you
being
for serving on our Innovation Campus Advisory Board. Your leadership is already, I think, steering us in a really important direction. And Lance Collins, we were very fortunate to have. One of the things that happened, he was the Dean of Engineering at Cornell for 10 years and was a leader in promoting inclusion and diversity at that institution. And he understands how to do it, but it is a challenge. One of the things that we found when we announced the Innovation Campus was the most enthusiastic future partners were the Alexandria public schools. They were on top of us immediately, talking with ideas and talking about how we could help them, to Aaron's point, bring K through 12 into the conversation so that we have a continuous pathway to graduate school in computer science and related disciplines. So it's a long haul. You got to start somewhere, but it's an ambitious goal, and I think we have a really good chance of achieving that goal in the foreseeable future.
Thank you, President Sands. Thank you, Lynn, Downey, Aaron Rouse, and Bruce Smith. Thank you so much for joining us for this live Q&A. Thank you to each of you who submitted questions. And with that, I will send things over to Preston White for some closing remarks tonight.
Thank you, Dawn, for leading this discussion. Thank you, President Sands. And a warm thank you to our alumni Lynn Dowdy, Aaron Rouse, and Bruce Smith for all the time they've put into this and for their continued engagement with Virginia Tech. And thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. I'm Preston White, and I'd like to add my greetings from the Tidewater region of Virginia, home to the second largest population of Hokies in the nation. This campaign is the university's fourth and the most ambitious yet. Virginia Tech's history is defined by moments in which Hokies have stepped forward in a bold way to push the university to new levels of excellence. This is one of those moments, and like you, I'm proud to be a part of it. By supporting inclusion and diversity, we're making sure that every student understands cultures beyond their own, knows the value of multiple perspectives in solving problems, and has the opportunity to make a difference. We're ensuring that every admitted student has the means to join us in the classroom and has the support to graduate. For a student in need, a gap of just $500 can sometimes cause them to silently slip out of school, never attaining their college degree. To start making this difference, my wife and I would like to make a dollar-for-dollar challenge pledge of $100,000 to inspire first-time donors to make gifts to the Beyond Boundaries Scholarship Program. When I first made a gift many years ago, it was for $1,000, and I wondered if I was going to have to give something up to do this. What was I going to get out of this? I should have been thinking, what are those in need going to get out of this? Helping those in need makes them stronger, us stronger, and Virginia Tech stronger. Remember, it's not what you keep, but what you pass on that makes you who you are. Your gift of any size can make a boundless impact. Be the best you can be and be a proud Hokie. Go Hokies!